And then we're going to go here. Just make sure we can hear everything. Actually, let me get on my phone.
Who are these men that you have this other chat with?
Those are my friends.
Who are these men that you have this other chat with? That's funny.
Those are my friends.
Who are these men that you have this other chat with?
All right. Well, I guess I can hear you. It's not the cleanest audio, but what are you gonna do? Here, let me try changing the settings to that. All right, talk for me real quick. All right, talk for me real quick.
Hello.
All right.
I feel like I can hear my echo a little bit.
Yeah, I was listening to it on playback.
Oh.
I was just trying to make sure I could hear everything. Fine. Alrighty, then we're good to go. Okay, so this is a new show I'm starting. This is the third time we've tried to do this. It's a new show I'm starting called Devil's Advocate. It's a conversation style, kind of, not really a debate, but kind of a debate, not really. It's more conversation style, and we're going to talk about different topics. Today, the topic of discussion is going to be the education system, and we'll see how that goes. All right, the person I'm talking to today is a good friend of mine, former classmate at Florida Gulf Coast University, Allison De La Cruz. Allison, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello. I'm so annoyed that we have to do this again because yesterday it went so well.
Yeah.
Hey, my name is Allison. Like Zach said, we went to school together, became good friends, had a couple classes together. I started as a pre-nursing major at school, and then as time went on, I just realized I just really fucking hated science, and I was not great at it. So I switched to integrated studies, which was this new discipline that my school came out with. It was just super general, basically for people who didn't know what the fuck they wanted to do. So now I am not using my degree. I'm running a small cleaning business in Naples, Florida. And yeah, just chilling. Quarantine 2020.
Yeah. So Allison graduated with integrated studies major, which is, it's kind of like a utility major, right? Basically.
You know what? I don't even know, because like when someone has a specialized degree like engineering or education, like you kind of know what route they're going to take or what jobs they can get.
Yeah.
But when someone just has a bachelor's degree that isn't specialized, I really don't know how to answer people when they say what my degree is used for. Basically, my answer is any job that requires just a bachelor's degree. Like there's a lot of weird jobs that aren't specialized, but they're like, yo, we kind of want you to be educated. We would prefer, and actually, it's a mandate for you to have a bachelor's degree. We don't care what it's in, but you need a bachelor's degree.
Yep.
That's the only places that accept me, but coincidentally and funny enough, I don't want any of those jobs. So yeah, we're out here just chilling.
Yeah. And we can go ahead and start on that with the education system. That's one of the biggest things that I've seen that's really broken about the modern education system is now a bachelor's degree is what used to be, or a bachelor's degree used to be considered very, very, in very, very high regard. So
Right,
it'd be super specialized positions that would require a bachelor's degree. Whereas in the past, you would get that same exact recognition from a high school diploma that you now get from a bachelor's degree. And if you want to go into a super specialized field, you'd need a bachelor's degree. Nowadays, you need a master's or a doctorate in some degree to be able to go into a super specialized field. And oftentimes,
10 years from now.
Yeah. And oftentimes nowadays, you, with how expensive school is nowadays, that's not feasible to a lot of different people. And there's plenty of reasons as to why this happened. And a lot of it has to do with, the government getting involved and in a lot of different ways, but it's just the fact that nowadays everyone is told that you have to go to college. There's no life for you if you don't go to college. You can't do anything with your life if you don't go to college.
People are made out to feel and to think that they're dimwits if they don't.
Yeah, if you don't have a college degree, well, and society views you that way. Unfortunately, and it's a big problem. So go ahead and tell me your biggest problem with the education system. I'm gonna see if I can rebut it in any way.
Okay.
But go ahead and.
I have so much to say about this. First of all, like you said, I know it's just a tough and touchy subject. Obviously, I always play devil advocate for both sides. My personality is always staying not neutral in my passion or mindset, but neutral more so in the fact that when I'm speaking to someone, I don't want to be that person that's constantly jabbing and responding to everything.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to make this more of a conversation style show, because I didn't want it to be like that, to where people are trying to score points instead of actually trying to have a discussion. And I'm having a couple people on. I've had a couple people set up where I know they're very, very good debaters. And it's not the fact that, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I like to think I'm a pretty good debater. But when you're in a debate versus a conversation, oftentimes the sides are set and no minds get changed.
Correct.
So that's
what America is dealing with the entire year.
Yeah, so that's why I wanted to make this show.
It's stupid because people I'm not perfect at it all the time at listening, but like if you can't have a conversation, your point is never going to get across to the other party. Never.
I agree 1,000%. But go ahead.
All right, so education system. First of all, like you said, society does make you feel bad if you don't go to school, and it's way deeper than that. But even myself, I catch myself sometimes when I think, even though I don't believe that, internally and subconsciously, it's been so deep-rooted into me that if you don't have a college degree or if you didn't finish high school, you're not educated, that sometimes a quick glimpse of my judgment thinks that when I talk, not all the time, but I notice that my internal subconscious might feel that, even though I know in my head and my mind knows it's not true. I might feel that just because it's been so deeply rooted into me, that judgmental mindset that people have to do this. If they have some sort of laborious job or work in the field of something that doesn't require, which also people can make a lot of money, like in construction business. For some reason, it's just been ingrained in my mind and in society's mind that if you're not college educated, you're no one. But I know that's not true.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a big issue. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about this subject, and it kind of happened where in the 50s and 60s, coming out of college, a lot of people were making a lot of money out of college. But the problem was then the brothers and sisters of those people that made a lot of money coming out of college in the 50s and 60s, then their brothers and sisters told their kids, okay, you have to go to college because you want to make this kind of money. Look how rich my brother slash sister is, and they got a college degree. You want that for yourself, so you need to go to college.
What a 50s, 60s mentality.
Yeah. Then all the kids of these people started to try and get into college, and then obviously you have the government assistance comes more in the 80s and 90s, and certainly into the 2000s, which I'll get into a little bit later. But when you look back at the 50s and 60s, those people that graduated from college, they graduated from college because they had the desire to go to college and graduate. They had a plan for themselves. And when you're telling young kids, hey, you need to go to college to become as wealthy as my brother slash sister, these kids are now, okay, well, this is what I have to do. They don't have a drive to do it. It's just something that they feel like they need to do, which isn't a mindset that's normally concurrent with success, if you understand what I'm saying.
Of course.
But go ahead. What are the other problems that you see? Because you said you had a bunch.
So to go off of what you said, you know what, Zach, I really believe that as every generation continues, as every year continues, as the generation grows, I think, and you may think I sound hippie for saying this, but I just think spiritually that our generation grows in awareness and consciousness. First of all, because let me just say this: those people in the 50s and 60s that were telling their kids that they need to go to college because they're basing it off their brother or sister's successes or their neighbor's successes. Because my mom is one of those babies, and my mom did that for me. My mom also went to college too, but she had that mindset. But do those parents ever question anything? Do they ever think to take it a step deeper and think about why they make more money? Because the reason those people that go to college and are specialized is because they deep down have a really, really good passion or calling for that profession.
Yeah,
they don't think about that. They just think about the superficial consequences and results, which is the money.
Exactly.
But they don't take it a step deeper to question everything. And I think as our generation progresses, we question everything. We question what we put in our food. People in the 50s and 60s ate processed trash. I mean, we still do, but people are more conscious about it now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And there is a lot of that there. I mean, you see a lot of success stories from people that didn't graduate college, especially throughout the 2000s. You have plenty of people that never went to college and are now millionaires and billionaires because they didn't feel like they needed it. They just decided, hey, well, I have this skill that I have. Nothing that I'm going to learn in college is going to help, help that skill grow any more than it already is. It's if you look at people who founded a lot of these social media companies, they don't have college degrees, and that's because that they were growing up. They were in an environment where they learned how to do software development and stuff, which is awesome. And then they were able to use that skill directly out of high school. I mean, I think Mark Zuckerberg did spend like a year at Harvard or something. But then he ended up leaving because he was just like, well, I mean, nothing's going to get me further at this college than if I were just to take this, and create a business on my own and then and grow that business. It really was a difference in passion or pride rather than actual certification.
The thing is that a lot of people don't have that mental strength like Mark Zuckerberg did, like Steve Jobs did, like fucking Einstein did. A lot of people do not have that mental strength because they've been so hammered into their brain the necessity to go to college. And that's what hurts us. I think I know that from watching my friends, from watching people in college, how unhappy they are, and they have all these other passions and skills and natural talents that cannot be completely fulfilled because they're so busy trying to make something happen that shouldn't be happening. And I'll give you an example. You may You may have heard, you may like or dislike, doesn't matter, because fact of the matter is that Billie Eilish was one of the greatest musical artists of 2019. I mean, I'm a fan. I'm not like a diehard fan, but I really do appreciate and enjoy her music.
I'm gonna be honest.
Sure.
I haven't listened to many Billie Eilish songs. So.
Okay, but you've heard of her. Correct?
Yeah, I've heard of her. Yeah.
And she blew up and became so big out of nowhere. This 15-year-old girl.
Yeah.
One of she came out of nowhere, just blew up, and is insanely just successful in the eyes of society now. I mean, obviously, success is happiness for me, but in the eyes of society, this woman is just sold out tour after tour. Anyways, she's like a teeny Michael Jackson of our era, to say the least. But why I mention her, again, I don't know much about her life. This is just from what I've read. She and her interviews, I've watched several of her interviews, not because of I'm trying to understand her artistry. I mean, I am. I just want when I see people that I admire, whether I want to have their art hanging in my house or not, I look at people that I admire and I want to see what they did growing up or what they did in their life that helped them to become that way, that helped them to be meet their fullest potential. And long story short, she was homeschooled, so was her brother.
Mm-hmm.
And she said in one of her interviews, I doubt that if I was not homeschooled that I would be where I'm at, because I'd be too scared to be myself. I'd be too scared to be so weird, because all these kids in school are brainwashed into being some sort of normal and having to choose a profession or career. But because she was homeschooled, she didn't have that pressure behind her. She didn't have anyone telling her, you need to love history, you need to do this, you need to look into colleges. So she didn't have any pressure. She was literally just having fucking fun. She was having the time of her life. Her and her brother were making music. They were jamming out. They were doing what they loved, and they were able to embrace and access that part of their brain because they didn't have all this external pressure from society. So that helped them to become their best selves. And like all of us, a lot of us don't have that because our parents don't believe that fully, and we don't believe that fully. So I think it really is just a huge detriment to our true selves.
Yeah, I mean, I have cousins that were homeschooled, and I know a big question about homeschooling is whether or not that the kids will be socialized and whether they'll be able to like relate to people if they're homeschooled solely. But I haven't.
So you put them in activities.
Yeah. But I haven't seen that with my cousins, and it's might be because they went to church growing up, so they were around people all the time. They had a pretty big youth group and children's program at their church. They played sports. They had all these other ways that they could meet people and socialize. And so especially in the 21st century, there's so many different ways to like meet people. There's a lot of aversion to the idea of homeschooling for this one reason, and it's from whoops, that was my alarm.
wakey.
Yeah. Let me make sure that none of my other alarms go off. All right. But a lot of aversion to homeschooling for this one reason, and from my personal experience, I haven't seen that reason to play out as a lot of people say that it will. So
it really just depends on the person, dude.
Yeah.
Like, not every person is built the same, and some people will be awkwardly social based on how society thinks of it for the rest of their life. Some people are just naturally social. Like, there's some things that nurture cannot overcome nature. But for the most part, if that's something that someone's worried about, like, you can put your children into dance classes, you can put your children into travel soccer teams or travel baseball teams. Like, there's things you can do to evade that without sending them to school and then putting them in a classroom where they're fed cookie cutter programs, which is insane to me, because not one child is the same. Not one child tests the same. Not one child reads the same. And the fact that you're putting them all in the same regimen is just kind of BS, because they're all going to grow differently. They all come from different backgrounds. They all have different traumas growing up. Like, it's just there's such a lack of individualization in school systems, which is, I believe, is hurtful to the individual human creature.
Yeah. So I'm going to offer a slight challenge, just for the sake of challenging it.
Okay, cool.
So when you have a public education system like the United States, and because the United States is so large and covers a huge area of people with different cultures, different religions, different everything, there has in the idea of a national education system, which we don't really have. We have more state education systems, and a lot of them sign on to the same programs like Common Core. And of course, everyone kind of uses the SAT and the ACT. But the reason for these standardized testing measures is to test everyone at the same level. So in terms of I'll just use the SAT and the ACT because that's the best example I can think of. So with the SAT and ACT, they are standardized tests. Now, obviously, the questions are different on every test a little bit. But the purpose of the SAT and the ACT is to test each student on some kind of common test that everyone is being judged on, so that there's no discrepancy. Say you have Jimmy in California and Jimmy in Florida. There needs to be some kind of way to test them against each other than just grades, because the education systems in California and Florida are different. The grading system might be different. So you can't just go based off of GPA. You need a standardized testing system to test them against each other, especially when it comes to colleges and universities. Now, with the way the university system is set up, I don't necessarily agree that that's necessarily the best option, because now you have this standardized test, which might hurt some people that necessarily aren't good test takers, but they're very, very good at other things like oral argumentation or, writing and stuff. So when you give them a multiple choice question or a multiple choice test, they have trouble dealing with the pressure and all this other stuff, but they have other talents that they can, use. That's another reason why I think in university applications, it shouldn't just be, fill out this questionnaire. What's your SAT score? What's your ACT score? I think that for students that aren't necessarily good test takers, I know some universities do this, but a lot of them don't, is require an essay, whether it's a 2-page essay, 3-page essay, something like that, so that someone with a lower SAT or ACT score, if they write a very, very good essay, they're still demonstrating that they have a college-level writing ability, and especially if that's the field that they're going into, I think that might help close the gap in that situation. But the standardized testing thing is just, and the whole cookie cutter thing is just to make sure that, unfortunately, it's the best way to make sure that everyone's on the same playing field. And I mean, there might be a better way, but I can't think of one. If you have an idea of a better way to compare students in different areas of the country or even different areas of the state, because obviously people from Southwest Florida or people from Miami are just different culturally than people from Jacksonville.
Yeah, so that's completely different. The standardized testing makes sense for me because the standardized testing is a test for a competition. If you and two Jimmys, you both are two different animals, but from the same breed. If you're fighting for the same thing, then you're in competition. So yeah, you must take the same standardized test. I get that. What I don't agree is the learning process that comes before then. The whole K through 12.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that I have a tough time with. And the standardized test, if you have two guys that are competing to go to the same school and they're really about this competition, then yeah, so let the best win, because that's how it is. I mean, it's a mental and it's a war of knowledge, which is good. I'm just saying sometimes there's someone who is taking the SAT and I don't know, they just do it's like when you're choosing your partner. You love food, so you really, really desire a partner that is a great fucking cook. So you have these two guys, and one guy can cook pretty well, but this other guy, he's like Michelin-starred chef material. So you're like, damn, I want him, I'm gonna choose him.
Yeah.
But then this guy makes snarky comments to waiters and waitresses and is kind of rude to people when you go out, and he doesn't really brush his teeth every day, and he's got like gunk in his teeth every day. The other guy is a more mediocre chef, but he's got the whole shebang all around. Like, he's just super well-rounded. Like, which one are you going to go for?
Yeah, it's positives and negatives.
Right.
Pros and cons list.
Pros and cons list. The SATs, I think, yeah, it's just like that, you know. And college processes are so fickle. Sometimes kids will have the same score. I've seen it happen with friends. They'll have the same everything, the whole thing. Maybe just someone had, I forgot, a legacy. Someone had like a grandpa or father that went to the school, so that kid gets chosen over someone else. And it's cool, I get that, but then if Jimmy, who didn't get into that school, is super butthurt and isn't as mentally strong as Mark Zuckerberg, that shit's gonna eat at him, you know?
Yeah.
And his confidence gonna shoot down low. He's gonna forget about all that he can do and all the positives in himself. He's just gonna beat himself up and just not believe in himself for God knows how long, whether it's a year or 2 years, until he's out of that fucking mental asylum that he's not good enough.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that about the high school system with how they teach, or even the public school system doesn't necessarily have to be high school. It could be middle school as well. What is your position on like school choice and charter schools, private schools, that kind of thing?
I don't know. I don't really know enough about all that stuff. I recently just learned a little bit about charter schools. I still don't know much about them.
Okay.
Private schools. I know a lot of my friends that went to private schools, and most of the time that is a huge class barrier, because those are typically upper middle class, upper class children, and that creates a huge gap.
Yep.
Which is fine, because they can relate to people in their class and status, but it kind of makes them grow up in a bubble, because they're not exposed to the strifes and like struggles that maybe other kids that they will need to know and be aware of 2020, you know.
Yeah.
There is a lack of empathy and a lack of understanding for people's backgrounds, even still shit today. I mean, I'm on Instagram all the time, and it's not the best news source, but it is a positive news source, I feel like, because a lot of millennials run it. And when I watch the news, it's a bunch of like just angry old hags just fighting, like trying to throw jabs at each other. So I don't believe everything I see. I'll research it if it's really something I want to see. But most of the time, what I'm seeing is real raw shit of people suffering, people crying, people hurting, and that's the shit I want to see, because I want to see that everything isn't daisies and roses. Which sometimes when you are included into this small area like Naples, when you're into this small bubble, you think everything is daisies and roses, and then you step out, you're like, oh fuck, there's people actually dying and crying and like being hurt by what the world is doing. So I think diversity is important, but school, again, every person's built different. Some people it's for them, some people it's not, but the fact that it's pressured into our minds is just no bueno for me.
So I'll give you my perspective on charter schools and private schools. So obviously,
tell me the difference between them first.
So a private school is closed to the public. You have to pay to get in, or you have to reach a certain threshold with a test that they offer to get in. Some private schools aren't necessarily based on pure cash, although most of them are. So with charter schools, it's very similar to a public school, but they get to create their own curriculum. Now, of course, they still test against the same things that the high school kids test against, so they still have...
So they're not government, run?
No,
Or federally run, whatever the word.
They're not... Yeah, so, for instance, I went to charter school in growing up. I was at public school from kindergarten through third grade, and then I went to charter school in fourth at a school called Berkeley Elementary, and then I stayed at Berkeley Elementary I stayed at Berkeley because there was a elementary and a middle school through eighth grade, and then I went to a charter school for high school. Now, the main reason I went to a charter school for high school is because that's where all my friends were, because I went from fourth to eighth grade, and that's where you do a lot of your growth and development. And that's where all my friends were. So The difference is that a charter school kind of runs on like a lottery system. So, say there are 700 spots. Most charter schools do a first come, first serve lottery system. So you get in, and if you're on the waiting list, you're number, whatever on the waiting list to get into this school.
So it's kind of like getting into a college.
Kind of, yeah. The difference is that it doesn't cost you $20,000 a year.
Right. But it still costs you something, right?
No, the charter school is completely free.
Okay.
It just they just are allowed to run their school differently from a public school. So the principal has a lot more power over curriculum and everything else.
Where do they get their funding from?
So it's still state funded. So they still get funding from the state of Florida. But they have a lot more leeway in what they're allowed to do and what they're allowed to teach. And I believe they're allowed to take outside funding as well.
Okay.
Whereas a public school is not allowed to take outside funding for education. I think they can take outside funding for events or like offer services for events. But I'm not 1,000% sure. Because I know I mentioned to my mom that because they, with all the COVID situation going on, it was really stressful for her. Because she's an assistant principal, she has to deal with a bunch of different stuff with teachers and students. And then also they're having to deal with the Polk County School Board and everything going on there. But they had a problem to where they have a certain amount of square footage in their building. So to socially distance the students, they didn't have enough square footage to socially distance the students.
Right.
Or it's to socially distance the students that they had last year.
I think that most schools don't have the square footage for that, right?
Huh?
I would say that most schools don't.
No, most schools don't. They're designed similar to how factories are designed. In the fact that they're trying to get as many people in the same place learning at the same time. Now, there are a couple of things that they have to abide by. They have, obviously, teachers' union contracts and stuff like that limit class sizes to a certain amount and everything. But with my mom's school in particular, with, I guess, the entirety of Polk County, they sent out an email to all the parents asking them whether they'd like to do, if they wanted to do online learning, or they could come in. They could do online learning through Denison, they could do in school, or they could do online learning through, what is it called?
Angel?
I can't remember the name of the... It's like it's an online learning software run by the state of Florida, I believe. So I can't remember the name of it. It saved my life. But so they could do either of those three options, and a lot of them chose to do online learning. So they're at like half the students that they normally have, or they were at one point this year. I don't know if they've had kids come back. I don't even know if that was allowed.
Was she at a charter school?
Huh?
Is she at a charter or public?
No, she's at a public school in a very low income area in my area.
Gotcha. Perfect. I know exactly where that is.
Yeah, she's in a low income area of Polk County at a middle school, public middle school. So they've had a lot of stuff to deal with coming through this COVID stuff because they didn't have the room to house 700 students inside the square footage of the building, and the leadership at the county level and the state level were kind of non-existent. They were just telling them what to do, and then there were all these problems. Like, okay, we need to socially distance the students inside the classrooms, blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, what if we don't have enough room? And they're basically, their response was just do it. Nike. But then they also ran into other problems because they need, to do lunches, they need to socially distance the students in the lunchroom, but their lunchroom's not big enough to do that. So the idea was that they could get their lunches and go back to their classrooms because now they have the reduced class sizes. Because a lot of people chose to do online learning. But then the problem arises where there's a part of the contract with the teachers union is that they have duty-free lunches.
Yeah.
And with duty-free lunches, that means they don't have to do anything during their lunch. They just get to eat and, relax.
Yeah.
But now that puts the school in a situation where they don't have anyone watching the kids during their lunches. If the teachers have duty-free lunches, they can't do in-classroom lunches because it's with the duty-free lunch, you have no responsibility to watch the students at that time.
Right.
So it's just a number of issues relating to the COVID situation. It just shows how poorly prepared the school system was to take on something like this. And that's not necessarily saying it's hard to prepare for something you've never seen before. So I'm not necessarily dragging them too hard, but it seemed like there was almost no plan to deal with it. So like
they had no idea it was coming, though.
Yeah, I mean they had no idea it's coming, but it started in February, March,
early March.
And there was no, like, it seemed like coming out of the summer, about to start the school year, they just decided that they were going to open schools, and they hadn't created an action plan to help, alleviate some of the pressure off of the schools to, enact these plans. So it was just, it was very confusing the way that they did it. Sorry, I was rubbing my eyeball.
That's okay. That's one of the best feelings in the world. Rubbing your eyeball.
But so it's not.
Your poor mother, poor teachers. Like I don't even like to think about what they go through because I get anxiety. I could not. It's just what I could not. Those poor people. They've got their work handed to them this year for sure.
I mean, after everything's gotten started, it's kind of cooled down a little bit, because my mom working with the principal at the school, they've figured out a way to make it work, and it seems to be working all right thus far. So I mean, they figured out a way to do it, which is awesome, and she seems a lot less stressed than she did before school started, actually. Because before school started, it was kind of bananas.
She was, like, calling you names and things?
No, she was just... she'd get home at, like, 8:30 at night and from working at school and trying to figure out what they're going to do, and then they'd have no plan, and so she'd be upset and...
Do you think that all that pressure and stress should have been put on them, or do you think there should be an emergency stress group federally set to take care of situations like that? Like, do you think our government should have those resources available and put the pressure? Like, obviously, more emergencies don't come around every day, but when they do you think there needs to be a set of professionals ready to take that on? Or do you think that the teachers should have to deal with it? I personally don't think that the teachers should have to deal with this, nor do they get paid enough to.
Well, it's a complicated question, because say you put this group of professionals in charge and tell them, okay, you guys are in charge of handling when this kind of situation arises. The issue with that is, okay, these professionals aren't necessarily licensed to teach. They don't understand the dynamics of a classroom. They don't understand different periods in a classroom work or how a certain school works. So then it also causes confusion for the kids and the parents. Which it's not like there was any lack of that as well, but you're now putting people that are unqualified in a certain area in charge of a certain area.
So how about this? How about take like 200, 300, 400, however many it takes of the top educators in the school system in the United States, and take 2 months off from school, or they could have taken June and July and August, or whatever it was, and had them plan for 2 months straight, giving them a really nice paycheck, have them not worry about anything else, and then come out stress-free and give all these solutions to the teachers.
Well, another issue that arises is no two schools are exactly alike. So each school has different square footage. Each school has different capacity to what they can carry. An interesting thought that just came to me that I'd never thought before is in situations like this, you could potentially open up other government buildings or of other publicly owned facilities. Like, I know the city of Auburndale has a rec center with basketball courts and other rooms all indoors, and maybe open that up to the public schools in the area. But then the problem arises where you'd have to you couldn't mix schools because they're either in the area or they're not in the area of that particular facility. So I'm not sure exactly how that would work in terms of logistics. Because
that's true, dude. My suggestions are just like super grandiose and broad.
I mean, it's possible.
I'm just like, fuck it, nothing matters. Have fun.
It's possible.
You're gonna do your fucking taxes.
It's entirely possible that something like that could work. But it's also entirely possible that it wouldn't be able to work logistically.
Right. So then, like, what is the logistic solution? Because I don't know.
That's a good question. I think that the people at each school should take charge because they know the situation that they're in the best.
Right.
Unfortunately, the problem is that they have state and county guidelines and state and county agreements with different organizations that they have to do things a certain way, which kind of hampers their ability to adapt whenever a situation like this comes up. If there would be a way to suspend those agreements temporarily, that would maybe be the ideal situation because then you have more flexibility. Because when they were kind of backed into a corner with this because they had so many things that they had to do or had to comply to, as well as comply with the social distancing and the masking orders. So maybe temporarily suspend those agreements for a certain amount of time or until a certain threshold is reached in terms of like infection rate and stuff like that. And once that threshold is reached, maybe start those agreements back up because that gives each individual school a little bit more flexibility dealing with a situation like this. And again, this is like a once in 100-year situation. Like, we're probably never going to see anything like this again in our lifetimes.
I hope to God not.
I highly doubt that we will. Just because of the rarity of it throughout history. Things like this don't come around that often. I mean, people point back to like the Spanish flu in the early 1900s as like the last time anything like this has happened. And fortunately, this isn't nearly as deadly as the Spanish flu. Because if it was, it'd be bad. It'd be really, really bad. I doubt even. Honestly, one of us might not even be here if it was as deadly as the Spanish flu.
Right. But then what about the 6% statistic that just came out?
Huh? Oh, the 6% statistic?
Yeah.
So a lot of people have misinterpreted this statistic to mean that only 6% of the people actually died from COVID. That's not what the statistic is saying. So it means that only 6% of the deaths didn't have comorbidities. And what a comorbidity is a different health condition that would cause someone to be more susceptible to dying from any particular disease or any particular condition. So, for instance, if, say, someone gets cancer and they have a heart condition, that person has a comorbidity of a heart condition, so they are more likely to die from cancer. It works the same way with coronavirus. So if you have a heart condition, or you have a lung condition, or you're overweight, or anything like that, those are considered comorbidities in the fact that they can make the virus more deadly to you. So,
of course, but that means that regular influenza would have been more deadly to them too, or just
yes,
else.
But so for instance, young healthy people without comorbidities are almost at no risk of catching, or they're not at no risk of catching. They're at almost no risk of dying of the virus. Older people, people with heart conditions, they're severely overweight. They have other issues like maybe like they've had kidney problems. These people are far more likely to have a fatality from a virus like this. And go ahead.
Okay. Well, if general health is a huge factor, then how come I haven't seen the news nor CDC encourage good health, good exercise, going to get, do something for their health? If health is such a huge factor and component of comorbidity, why aren't they encouraging people to stop eating shit? Why is Travis Scott partnering up with McDonald's for people to get more we're all encouraging masks and social distancing, but there's also other alternative practices that could easily be encouraged or not.
Well, so the reason that the CDC, I mean the health department always encourages, healthy eating and healthy dieting and healthy exercise.
Do they though?
They do. They do have programs constantly.
How hard is it for us to come across that news? I see news about masks and social distancing, but I don't see any news about.
So the issue with doing it now is that it's basically too little, too late. So if someone that was very, very, very overweight started dieting and exercising and doing all that stuff now, there's no guarantee that would have enough of an impact to.
Of course not, but it's not going to hurt.
I encourage people to diet and exercise all the time. I think living a healthy lifestyle is not only beneficial to your body, but it's also beneficial to your brain.
Of course, and your happiness.
Yeah, and your happiness.
Quality of life.
Yes, but there's a lot of reasons as to why you encourage the masking instead of that, because also a large portion of those people that have died of coronavirus were very, very old. And that's not to say old people deserve to die of the virus or anything, because as someone that only has one grandparent left, and I've lost two in my lifetime, losing a grandparent is very, very, very hard. But with elderly people, masks and social distancing is probably the best thing for them. And this has been the largest portion of people that have died is the elderly. So that's why I think it's more of a mitigating risk than it is something like trying to stop it completely. Because I think the problem is there's no once a virus this contagious gets introduced into a population, at some point almost everyone is going to get it. And there's almost nothing you can do about it.
I definitely think I've had it. I just didn't know it.
Yeah, I do too. I think I got it in like May, but I just because I think the advice at the time for young people that had contracted the virus was just to stay home and stay away from people.
Yeah.
So, you know, the reason I think I had it is because for a couple days I had trouble breathing and I had a fever.
Yeah.
And I've never, like, I'm someone that's never had asthma, someone that's never had any issues breathing. And for me to have, like sharp pains in my chest from breathing and also have, like, a 102 fever, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to stay home and not talk to anybody for about a week and a half. And after about a week and a half, I was fine. It was, like, not the most comfortable thing in the world, but, I mean, I was relatively okay. And so that was the advice at the time from the CDC. I've thought about going to get, like, the antibody test because that's how you tell if you have had it. But I looked up more information on the antibody test, and if you've had a cold in the last year, then those antibodies also show up. So there'd be no real way for sure of knowing whether or not, like, I've had it or not. I'd basically find out if I've had a cold in the past year, and I know I have. So,
I didn't even get tested when I thought it because that shit was $300. How is anyone supposed to afford that shit?
When did you think you had it?
I thought I had it in July.
July?
I just avoided and disregarded testing because it was so expensive.
That was that expensive?
Yeah, bro. It was either that or first of all, the free testing was sold out everywhere.
Okay. Because that's what I was thinking. Is because my mom went and got tested because she was in contact with someone that had it. She was at, like, because she used to belong. Well, she still belongs to a sorority. She was part of a sorority in college. She still belongs to that sorority, and they had a meeting up in Orlando, and then one of the people, went home and found out that they had the virus. So my mom went and got tested for free because, I mean, it's a little different because I think Southwest Florida is a little more populated than Polk County. Well, maybe not even necessarily more populated, but there's a lot more space in between people here. Because Polk County is one of the larger, like, square mileage counties in the state of Florida, which is why we have comparable, like, size of, like, population to some other counties, but we're not necessarily very compact. We don't have any, like, the biggest city is Lakeland, and that's not very big. So she went and got tested, and we had clinics and everything testing for free, and it's possible that in your area that there were just so many tests going on that they were all sold out. I know we weren't sold out here, but I mean that's more of a local issue.
My area is primarily a senior community, so that could have been why too. But it was significantly hard to get the test, which I don't think was cool because I mean think about people who are very, 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 very poor and low income, which is a lot of our community too. Even though Naples is a very wealthy community, there's a lot of
areas, like I can't remember the name of the place off the top of my head.
Immokalee City?
No, but that's another area.
Yeah.
There's a place I volunteered at that it was a community center, and it was in an area of town that is a very high crime, low income area of town. So I can't remember the name off the top of my head. It's bugging.
Naples?
Huh?
Are you sure it was in Naples?
I'm trying to think. It wasn't in Naples. It was north of Naples.
Fort Myers, Bonita?
Yes. Well, no. I don't know. I can look it up later.
Okay.
But I mean, I understand for communities like that, like a $300 expense is the difference for me between like keeping your house and not keeping your house, or keeping your living space and not keeping your living space.
It was just way too much, and I was like, you know what? I don't feel shitty enough to go and just for someone to tell me I have it.
Yeah, and I think that's why the CDC guidelines at the time, because I think, well, actually, July was back when testing was. They were testing, like Florida was testing more than any other state in the country, but so that I mean, that's surprising to learn that everyone was sold out down there. Maybe there was just more people trying to get tests because they were available, and then they run out as soon as they become more prevalent.
Yeah, exactly.
But because I know when I thought I had it, testing hadn't really ramped up yet. There were still very, very, very few tests. Not even in the United States, in the country. There are not even in Florida, in the country. There were still very few tests going on because they were just starting to, mass manufacture them. So there still weren't that many available. But
going back to my last comment, I'm not against masks. I'm not against social distancing. Like, I'm for everything that helps. I listen to people. When someone who knows what they're talking about tells me to do something, I listen to them. The health, the food, all that shit, like you said, it's not an overnight thing, and I get that. The reason I bring it up in the first place is because it's a deep-rooted...
Yeah, well, it's a lifestyle decision, and it's easier to get people to agree to wear a mask than it is to ask people, okay, change your entire lifestyle, don't eat as much red meat, don't drink as many soft drinks, don't go out and eat McDonald's, that kind of thing.
It's a deep-rooted issue, just like racial inequality is a deep-rooted issue. The thing is that it's just being brought to light now, but it's always been an issue. It might always be an issue, and I don't know how we're going to get people to... We can't even get people to wear a fucking mask, so how are we going to get people to fucking eat a piece of broccoli?
Well, I mean... So, on the masking thing, I'm the same way. I'm not anti-mask. I'm not anti-social distancing. But there's been problems on both sides. So there's people that argue against science that you should wear a mask all the time, no matter where you are. If you're at home in your bedroom alone, you should be wearing a mask, and that is ridiculous to me.
That is ridiculous.
And there's also people that are like, a mask doesn't do anything. A mask is basically a useless piece of cloth you're putting over your face. So the mask issue is one that I frame like this. So is a mask going to prevent you from getting the coronavirus? No, but it can. It helps reduce the likelihood. The way you catch the virus isn't by getting a single one of the droplets in your mouth. It's by getting a large number of them. So even if droplets can get through a mask, the idea is that it'll be enough of a reducement of the droplets so that you won't necessarily become infected with like a lethal amount of it. Because a lot of times the bad cases that you see are people that have inhaled a large number of droplets, not people that, people that touched a doorknob that someone that had coronavirus had, it not necessarily going to infect you. It's a matter of breathing in a large number of droplets. So the way the mask issue is one where I think you should wear a mask. I think culturally, I think it's more of a cultural issue than it is a government issue. I think the government should advise people to wear masks. The problem I have with forcing mask mandates is because some mask mandates, I know in the area that I live, some of the mask mandates early on were that if you were in public, you had to wear a mask. But public is a very, very broad term. So, for instance, I play golf and I play disc golf, and those are outside activities you do normally away from people. And while those mask mandates were going on, we were aware at the time that, UV radiation seems to kill off the virus pretty quickly. So being outside and away from people, you shouldn't have to wear a mask. But the government was mandating in public, wear a mask. So the problem with a lot of the masking laws is that they're far too broad. They need to be specified and written more, specifically, if you're indoors in public, if you're going into a business. And I think anyone refusing to wear a mask inside of a business that is asking you to wear a mask is an idiot. Because in all reality, as a libertarian, I'm very small government, but I'm small government, but I'm not against a private company asking you to do something inside their establishment. And if you don't want to do that, go to a different place where they don't mandate it. Like, you have no right to complain to the owner or the manager if they ask you to wear a mask, even if it's for, 10 steps inside of a restaurant to your table. I know people think that's ridiculous, but hey, I mean, if they ask you to do it, just do it. And then
just fucking do it.
Yeah, it's not that big of a deal.
I have a friend who's super right-wing, which is fine. The reason we even say that when we describe our friends is just so you understand their political points and their stances. But he's all about if a business asks me to wear a mask, fuck them. I'm not going in. I'm going to drive 30 minutes to the one business that doesn't require me to wear a mask.
And that's fine. If he wants to spend the money and gas to do that, he can do that. I don't care.
Yeah. Bro, it's not a huge deal,
It's not that big of a deal. The mask costs 50 cents. You driving 30 minutes to get to another place costs at least $1.
He's got the money, so let him do
it. Okay. maybe that's a class difference. I wouldn't spend the gas to go. I already have to drive 30 minutes to work. I don't enjoy that drive, and I'm not going to drive 30 minutes to go.
Yeah, bro. 50 cents? That's like 0.008 gallons of gas.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that is all. I think we can wrap this up. Thank you.
I think we had a pretty good combo.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a great combo. Thank you so much for coming on. And I will upload. I mean, I did stream this live, but I will upload it on the channel afterward, so people can watch it if they want to. This has been Devil's Advocate. Thank you to my guest again, Allison De La Cruz. Is there anything you want to plug while you have the chance?
Nothing besides the fact that I just want the best for each and every one of you, and I am praying, or however you may take that, not religiously, for everyone's happiness, everyone's good health, and just do things that make you happy. Eat good food, exercise, get some sunlight, and take it easy on yourself.
Alrighty. So that is all. We're going to sign off now. I also wish everyone has a good day. Stay good health. Stay healthy. Yeah.